Tonight on Beyond Reason Radio, there is so much out there that is beyond reason that I have to talk about. First of all, the obvious, the big story of the day. A guy crashes a plane on purpose into a mountain, and everyone rules out terrorism. That's one thing. In the next hour, this is a 2-hour special, by the way, in the 8 o'clock hour, I'm going to talk about how Ted Cruz is going on Obamacare. And the United States releases declassified documents of Israel. Coming up next on Beyond Reason. Yes. You know, I named this show Beyond Reason because I try to be your voice of reason that sifts through all the stuff in the media, in the news, that is well beyond reason. Well, this week might be the week of weeks in terms of things out there that are beyond reason. It's unbelievable what has happened this week in the news. And luckily, you are here with me, Michael Yaffee, on this Friday night, so I can recap it all and try to sift through it and give some reason to it. But a lot of it, I don't know if I can. Tom, Benton, I don't know if I can.
It's been a wacky week, no doubt about that.
Yeah, exactly. And the first story, obviously, by the way, that's Tom Benton producing for me. How you doing, Friday?
I'm doing fine. Good to be here. It's a Friday night. It's going to be a great weekend. It's going to be temperatures in the 70s and sunny Saturday and Sunday. So get ready to enjoy. It's going to be nice.
Ooh, okay. But right now it's rainy, so stay in your car
and
stay
listen.
in your house and listen. Yeah, so just so you know, by the way, you are listening to Beyond Reason here at beyondreasonradio.com and News Radio 102.5 WFLA, still on AM 540, by the way, as well, and also on your iHeartRadio app at News Radio 102.5 WFLA. By the way, there is no reason why you can't listen to this show even after it's done. I am on SoundCloud. I am on Stitcher. I am on TuneIn, the TuneIn radio app. If you go to my website, beyondreasonradio.com, all my old podcasts are there. I am on YouTube, Facebook, and if you search Bud Hedinger Live on your iHeartRadio app for the podcast, you can catch my podcast on there as well.
My.
So there is how many sources you can find the show is beyond reason. The only place I'm not on yet is iTunes, because Apple is making it difficult for me for some reason.
Of course.
The picture has to be just right if you get the feed. It's a whole technical thing, but I'll be on there as well. So the first thing that is beyond reason this week, obviously the horrible story of the Germanwings co-pilot who decides to crash a plane in France into a mountain. It broke during the morning show, actually, a couple days ago. As they listened to the audio of the cockpit, they found that the pilot left. He left to go to the restroom, came back, knocked on the door, wouldn't let him in. Nothing. The co-pilot said nothing this whole time in the 8 minutes. Then the pilot tries to bang down the door. Apparently he gets an axe and tries to break down the door. In the last seconds, the passengers are screaming, and then it's over. The whole time, the co-pilot, Andreas Lubitz, is just breathing. There was no signs of anything in terms of before, when they got on the plane, the co-pilot and pilot were just talking normally. And then this happens. They release all this week, but immediately they say they are ruling out terrorism. Why? I mean, even if it's not terrorism, which it might not be, it might just be one insane guy, one depressed guy who just lost his mind and happened to be in the worst place you could be to lose your mind. But to rule out terrorism immediately, that doesn't make sense to me. I think there could be a lot of evidence that this might be a terrorist act on this guy. There was a source in German news, German PI news. I found this on the Gateway Pundit. We were talking about it this morning. It has not been confirmed by other sources, but this one source, German PI news, apparently pretty reliable sometimes, says this guy was a convert to Islam. That when he left, he took this guy took a leave of absence or whatever in his pilot training, he became a convert to Islam. We also know that ISIS made a Facebook page praising Lubitz this week. These things aren't really talked about. It is beyond reason to me that we would rule out terrorism immediately. But this is the tragedy of tragedies. And this morning when we were talking about it on Bud Hedinger Live, on the show that I produce 6 a.m. to 9 a.m., Monday through Friday, we were talking about how do you reconcile something like this? This is the times when tragedy like this strikes. This is the times where you question the existence of God. You question your faith. It really shakes your foundation in that way, because how could a loving God do this or allow this to happen? But when I look at something like this, and I hear that the pilot is just the co-pilot, locks the door and is just sitting there breathing, intent on doing this. This, to me, shows the existence of evil. This is beyond doing something bad. This is beyond making mistakes. This, to me, is evil. And it shows that even today in the world, while we like to pretend evil does not exist, it exists still in a real way. There are forces of darkness out there that we have to face every day. And the only thing that can keep you, help protect you, get you through the struggles of the forces of darkness in the world, is faith and belief in God. That there is hope out there. And I found a story right before I came on the air that gives me hope. You know, I tried to be somewhat positive on this show. Everything is beyond reason. We can always be negative. But I saw a story here that gives me hope in humanity when there is a time of no hope in humanity. And this came the day after the crash. Apparently, and this was posted on a Germanwings Facebook page, a passenger said that the pilot of obviously another Germanwings flight after the crash, apparently he greeted all the passengers and holds an emotional speech. He reassures his flyers in the wake of the horror crash and tells them how they're going to make it. It's just a great story. The pilot understanding people are scared. People are frightened. Now, there's stats that show that even with these crashes lately, it is still safer to fly now than ever in history. Flying commercial is still not only the safest form of travel, it is the safest form of flying right now ever in history. But people are scared. And we can get into the whole psychology of why people get scared of flying over cars when way more people die in car wrecks every day, than in airplanes. We can go into that a little bit later, but I thought I would bring you this story. This is obviously translated from German, but a passenger said, yesterday morning at 8:40 a.m., I got onto Germanwings flight from Hamburg to Cologne with mixed feelings. But then the captain not only welcomed each passenger separately, he also made a short speech before takeoff. Not from the cockpit, he was standing in the cabin. He spoke how the accident touched him and how the whole crew, about how queasy the crew feels, but that everyone from the crew is voluntarily there. And about how his family and the crew have a family and that he is going to do everything to be with his family again that night. It was completely silent, and then everybody applauded. And this passenger said, I want to thank this pilot. He understood what everybody was thinking, and that he managed to give at least me, this is the passenger speaking, a good feeling for this flight. So there's a little hope. There's a little good story. That even in the bad, that someone can step up and just be good. And just do the right thing. We've seen a lot of evil in the world lately. But there's a lot of good in the world as well. 407-674-1025, 855-545-1025. If you have any comments on the crash itself, What do you think about them totally ruling out terrorism? To me, that doesn't make sense. When I heard that, at first I didn't think much of it, but I'm thinking, to totally rule it out? It could possibly be. Now, they might say we're trying to not have panic or whatever. And then there was the other aspects of this story where there was a flight in Africa, I believe, 2 years ago that was eerily similar to this flight. There was also a flight in Egypt. What was that, Tom Benson? Do you remember that flight in Egypt, Tom Benson? How long ago was that?
Oh, geez, a couple of years to 5 years ago, and there were two pilots in the cockpit, and there was a struggle between the two. One trying to crash the plane, the other trying to keep it up. Yeah.
Yeah, and I believe the pilot was saying something to do with God is with me or something like that. I need to look up the exact phrase of that. But that, I mean, we didn't really hear about that. That sounds like terrorism to me. And who knows, we might find more evidence that this is terrorism. But definitely beyond reason. I can't really get into the psyche of someone who does this other than the fact that evil exists in the world. So the forces of good have to fight back, and this one pilot did that in his own little way. All right, there is so much more to talk about there in this show. You were listening to a 2-hour special of Beyond Reason. The fight against Uber continues in Florida. We're going to have that and much more. You're listening to Beyond Reason Radio, News Radio 102.5 WFLA, and BeyondReasonRadio.com. You are listening to Beyond Reason here on News Radio 102.5 WFLA and BeyondReasonRadio.com. Make sure to go to Facebook, Facebook.com/BeyondReasonRadio. Like my Facebook page there. I post a lot of great stuff. I post links to stuff. Make sure you can subscribe, by the way, to this show on your Stitcher app, on your TuneIn Radio app, and on SoundCloud. So lots of different ways to catch the show even after we're off the air. But we're live now at BeyondReasonRadio.com. So I have been a huge proponent, a huge supporter, even though I've actually never used it. I have been a huge supporter in Orlando of Uber. Now, a lot of you know Uber. A lot of you know what Uber is. Probably a lot of you have used Uber and have liked you. Have you ever used Uber, Tom?
I have not, but it's the alternative way of using a taxi, right?
Exactly. And the reason why it's so successful is you just go on your app, the Uber app, and you just find there's lots of drivers, and they happen to be around, and you just find one that's close, and they come and they pick you up. They're in their own car, and you just pay on the app. Apparently, it's a lot more affordable. The drivers like it because they don't have all the regulations that you have to go through to be a taxi driver, and they make more money. So it seems like a win-win. In fact, I talked to a friend who lived in San Francisco. I think I may have mentioned this before, but he said, just 5 years ago, the majority of cars in downtown San Francisco were yellow. There were cabs. You go now, there's not many cabs.
Wow.
It's all Uber.
Huh.
That is how much people love Uber. And so Uber is expanding. They're becoming a multi-billion-dollar business. And they're trying to expand more in Orlando. They brought it to it earlier. I think it was late last year, actually. Mm-hmm. They brought it to Orlando. And it's been a huge success all over Florida already. In fact, I got this from Sunshine State News. They were talking about how much money Uber brings to Florida. They say by 2020... increase in revenues, they'll expect to bring $2 billion in 2020 alone in the Sunshine State. So they're saying in the future, in around 2020, they're going to start bringing $2 billion a year.
How does that work? They're not paying taxes, are they?
Well, I'm talking about in the economy.
Oh, okay.
Just in that industry.
All right.
I actually don't know how they pay taxes.
So in other words, the Uber industry will be billing about $2.2 billion by the year 2020.
Right.
I got you. Okay.
Right. In Florida. So,
yeah.
I mean, that's...
It seems to me the state wants their share somewhere, though.
Well, see, and they anticipate employing 130,000 Floridians by the year 2020. That's 130,000 jobs created by this company, by Uber, in Florida. That's great for the Florida economy. That's wonderful. But you're exactly right, Tom. Florida wants their cut. They can't, because they like the taxi cabs, because all these permits, all these fees, all these taxes, regulations that they can put on the taxi cab companies, Uber's getting around that. And Florida doesn't like that, of course. And of course, the taxi cabs are like, hey, we're paying you. You help us. Get rid of our competition now. So Florida's trying to do that. So the next thing that's going through the Florida legislature is they're trying to require Uber drivers to have extra liability insurance on their cars. So, I mean, to drive in the state of Florida, pretty much to drive anywhere in the country, you have to be insured. So no doubt that Uber drivers are already insured. It's a law. They have to be insured. They have to have certain coverage. But the state of Florida wants to add extra coverage to that. And it's going to cost the Uber drivers so much that they're going to have to raise prices if this goes through. The whole reason Uber is so successful is it's because it's easy to use and it's affordable. And the drivers can make a good amount of money. But the proposal would require ride-sharing companies like Uber to have a liability coverage of at least $125,000 for death and bodily injury, $50,000 in liability coverage for property damage, and at least $250,000 in uninsured and underinsured motorist coverage. When a rider is actually in the vehicle, the coverage would need to be $1 million for death, bodily injury, and property damage, and $1 million for uninsured and underinsured motorist coverage. $1 million. That coverage is going to cost a lot. The whole reason, like I said, Uber is successful is because normal, everyday people can find a job and do this. Yes, they have to go through a background check. Yes, they have to sign up with the Uber app, but they can do this. So it will help the economy, and like I said, it will employ 130,000 people in Florida. But the attack on Uber begins, and this is the first step. Now, there are some people fighting it in the Florida legislature. This was Jeff Brandes in the Florida legislature. He says, we need to make sure we have free and open markets to make sure we have competition. We need to get the red tape out of the way. We need to fight against these municipalities that continually throw up different regulations that stop the free market. Another legislator said the threat to ride sharing in Florida is not that we don't have enough qualified, confident, energetic people. The threat to ride sharing in Florida are the special interests and the local governments who want to go in and engage in collusive capitalism and make sure that we block the innovation that is so critical to our state. And they are exactly right. This is not about liability. Introducing this legislation has nothing to do with caring about the passengers, caring about the drivers, caring about the safety. That's what they're saying. This has everything to do with trying to buddy up with the taxi companies, trying to get them, because the taxi companies don't like this competition. Even though competition is ultimately making the taxi companies better. I see a lot more Mears taxi cabs lately. Why? Because the taxi companies used the Uber idea. They created their own apps on Google Play and the iTunes Store, or the Apple App Store. And now people can use them through an app, just like they can use Uber. In fact, in some areas, they have taxi cab companies as a part of the Uber app. So you can go to the Uber app and find a regular taxi cab if you want to. So the competition would help them as well. But the taxi cab companies are scared. They don't like the competition, and they're going into the Florida legislature and in other states. This is not the only state that this is happening. They're going into the Florida legislature, and they're trying to make it so Uber basically goes out of business.
You know, when you buy a home, you have to sign a declaration form that states that you yourself will live in that house.
Uh-huh.
You know, I can just imagine insurance companies on their forms saying, you promise to use this for the sole private use of yourself and not have any passengers. A statement like that. And you're going to have to sign off on it. If you don't sign off on it, you don't get the insurance.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I have to admit, Tom Benson, I am not an insurance company expert. I'm not sure.
Well, the insurance company wants their cut of everything too,
Well, that's a good point too. Yeah. The insurance companies are going to want their cut. But this isn't the insurance companies doing this. This is the Florida legislature. This is the government getting involved with the red tape. 407-674-1025, 855-545-1025. That's exactly right. And by the way, I have no stake in this personally at all. I drive my own vehicle in Florida. I drive my own vehicle. I don't ever use a taxi. I don't ride the bus. I don't use Uber. I have friends who have used Uber across the country, and they love it. They absolutely love it.
How much do they save?
I mean, I don't know exact amounts, but they said they save a lot. I mean, I have one friend who is in sound engineering business, runs mixer boards and all that stuff, and he has to go on tour a lot with bands or whatever, and he was traveling one summer, and he said they used Uber all the time and loved it. He said it was the greatest thing, way better than having to find a taxi or other things. So I'm not fighting for this for personal reasons. I just fight for this because I want what's best for the Florida economy. And when I read an article that says, ooh, we have an insurance agent on the phone. Ooh, we have to go to break. So hold on during the break because I really want to take your call from the insurance agent. It's very interesting. Ooh, I like when we get experts calling in. But I'm just fighting for the Florida economy. So we're going to talk to this insurance agent when we get back. You're listening to Beyond Reason Radio, News Radio 1025 WFLA, and BeyondReasonRadio.com. 407-674-1025. I want your take. Do you think that the Florida legislature should force Uber drivers to get extra liability insurance so much that they're not going to be able to afford it? They're going to have to raise prices exponentially, which the taxi companies will love. And speaking on this subject, we have an expert on the phone, John, who says he's an insurance agent. I'm going to call him John, the insurance agent. He's going to give us some details about how the insurance works with Uber and maybe how the Florida legislature is, what they're planning on doing, what this means for Uber. John, you are on Beyond Reason Radio with Michael Yaffee. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you for taking my call. I will give my disclaimer. Okay. I do not work for the company anymore, but it was a company that goes with the flow. I will not name them, but go with the flow. You can figure out who they are.
Okay. All right. Yes.
Right.
Good.
Okay. First thing, and this is just a PSA. The coverage that is the liability, the property and injury damage you cause to others, has nothing to do with covering your vehicle. The liability coverages. It doesn't matter if you're driving a 2015 Corvette or a 77 Pinto. You can kill somebody or damage a house
right
just the same in either one.
Uh-huh.
If you're driving around with the minimum, the state of Florida, I believe, minimum is $10,000. You need to raise that. That's the only thing between you and the other person coming after your personal assets. So a PSA, raise that to a minimum of $100,000. The liability coverage, forget covering your own car. The liability, the damage you cause to others and the injury you cause to others. You really need to have a minimum of $100,000. Now, $1 million sounds like a lot, but you got to remember, all the insurance companies, all they do, and yes, they're in business to make money, absolutely, but all they do is they rate risk. Forget Uber for a second. Let's talk about a pizza delivery driver.
Uh-huh.
Okay? If you're driving your car to and from school, to and from work, to see mom and dad, that's one thing. If you're delivering for, I don't know, the guys with the checkerboard, I can't name them, inherently there's a different, the guys with the, I don't know, it's a game with little black
Dominoes?
checkerboards. I can't, yeah, okay, you said their name, I didn't. There's an inherent different risk now to the insurance company. That guy's going to be taking more risks. He's going to be driving faster. He's going to be potentially running more lights,
Okay.
cutting in and out of traffic. So the insurance company will absolutely charge you more if you tell them you're going to use your vehicle for what they call business use. So
So it
if you
sounds
do
like
not-
the insurance companies would already ask people who use it for Uber to get more coverage because they're using it for Uber.
There you go. And therein lies the million-dollar question. Do you disclose that? If you
Right.
do disclose it, of course they're going to charge you more because the inherent risk to the insurance company goes up. You're going to drive differently if you've got a passenger paying you to take them somewhere than if you're just going to class. It's
Now,
think
when you
about it.
talk about the costs going up, how much do the costs go up for something like this?
It could conceivably double. It could
Wow.
conceivably double. And if you think about it, it makes sense. Again, the insurance company is just rating the risk. You're driving to mom and dad's. You're just going to Publix.
Mm-hmm.
You're listening to the radio. Your driving habits change versus if you've got somebody in the back seat that's paying you. And conceivably, you got another person getting ready to pay you as soon as you drop them off. Your driving habits will change. So the insurance company is doing nothing but rating the risk. And again,
Well, this isn't the
they're not-
insurance companies doing this, though. This is the Florida legislature forcing them to get this much coverage if they are an Uber driver. Now,
right now, I can't, and I didn't call to pro or con the benefit of this law. I called to clarify what the insurance laws, because that's my specialty, what
Right.
the insurance laws is and where the insurance company comes in. Me personally, I can tell you, an Uber driver is going to drive differently than somebody who's not an Uber driver.
now, what you mean drive differently? Does that mean they'll drive safer or less safe, or what does that mean?
I believe they're going to drive less safe. Again, think of the pizza delivery driver. He is inherently, what's the word I'm looking for? Going to get a benefit, incentivized. He's got an incentive to drive quicker to get back to the restaurant to get the next order.
They're in a rush.
So does
okay.
So does the Uber driver, right? In theory, the more he turns over, the more money he's going to make.
Okay.
So at me as the insurer, yeah, I'm going to charge you more. Absolutely. Now,
No.
$1 million of coverage sounds like a lot. I'll tell you straight up. That sounds like it's absorbent. And I agree with you that the taxi companies are absolutely behind this because they stand to lose money.
Now,
So
I have another question that Tom Benson brought up to me, actually. If they, like an Uber driver, if that Uber driver doesn't declare that he's an Uber driver and gets into an accident or something, can the insurance company refuse to pay?
absolutely.
Really?
They will absolutely deny that claim every day and twice on Sundays. If they find out that you were using, and the term they use is business use, they ask you straight up, will the vehicle be used for business? If you say yes, then they're going to talk to you like you were a pizza driver or an Uber driver or any other commercial vehicle that's being used for business, and the risk to the insurer goes up. If you say no and they find out you were being an Uber driver or delivering pizzas, they have absolutely right, and they will, and they do, refuse to pay a nickel on that claim, and you're on your own, out on the street, out in the cold. Absolutely.
Gotcha.
Good question.
Now, last question. I'm gonna put you on the spot here a little bit. I want to know what your take is. What do you think of the law? You said you didn't call to have a pro or con, but when you hear them wanting to pass legislation like this, do you think it's a good idea?
I am generally the one that says competition is never a bad thing. It's good for business. It's good for the customer. However, there does not appear to be a level playing field when it comes to Uber. If these cab companies are required to carry these coverages, which I believe they are, and I'm betting you dollars to donuts, the average Uber driver doesn't have the proper coverage, and if you were in an accident, you'd be SOL. So
Okay.
I don't think there's a level playing field. So I would almost agree that the playing field needs to be leveled.
Okay, so, but the only way to level that then would be to force the Uber drivers to do it, because obviously they can't not force. I'm just wondering if there's another way to get rid of some of the regulations so it's not making it harder for everybody.
You know, you don't really need. Again, we've gone into a society where everything has to be a law and we've overregulated. what's happening, and I'm betting this is the case if you caught an Uber driver in an honest moment off the record, they'd tell you that when they got insurance, called whoever they called to get insurance, they did not tell their insurance company that they're using their vehicle for business use. I would bet that. I would bet that 95% of the Uber drivers out there do not have the proper coverage, and if you were in an accident and they found out they were using it for business use, there'd be a lot of litigation because the insurance company would, and rightfully so, refuse to pay anything on that claim.
Interesting. All right, John, I appreciate your call. We got John, the insurance agent. Call back again sometime, my friend. I hope you enjoy the show.
Thank you.
All right. Interesting. Okay, well, he was actually pro for this law, even though he says it seems like they're going a little too far with $1 million liability, which, okay, but he was saying this will level the playing field, which is what the taxi cab companies are saying as well. I've heard them say that as well. I don't know. It just seems like every time I put on the news and they talk about Uber, it's some new thing they want to add to Uber. Now, maybe this one is a good idea while the other ones are a bad idea. I'm not sure. I just think this is that continuing attack on Uber because the government's in bed with the taxi companies.
Yeah, but if you're a passenger, you're taking a risk if you don't go with somebody who's licensed, bonded, and all that good stuff.
Well, and that's an interesting point. And that alone, without legislation, might force Uber to force their drivers to get it. If Uber was smart, they would force their drivers to do that. They force them to do background checks and all that other stuff. It's just, I hate to make it so hard that we're trying to get Uber out of business when it's such a great thing. There's got to be a way to get this done. And maybe the free market can find a way through the insurance companies. Maybe they can offer some kind of special deal for taxi drivers and Uber customers. But when the government gets involved, when the legislation gets involved, that kind of stuff can't happen. The free market has no chance to even be involved. And when I see the government wanting this legislation, by the way, I am very distracted right now. I just saw Harry Reid's video on Fox News. We have Fox News in the TV in the studio. I'm looking up and seeing his video. What did he do? Did he get in a fight with like a rabid raccoon or something?
No, I think he fell.
That's what he says.
Well.
Wasn't that like 6 months ago?
You think a legislator like him is going to lie? Huh?
I'm like, okay, that was like 6 months ago.
Yeah, but he had eye surgery on his eye. He's in bad shape.
Huge bruises and looks awful.
I know what he's doing. He was exercising and he fell off the treadmill or something.
Yeah, that's what they said. Yeah, that's what he said.
Yeah.
Okay. That just totally threw me off of everything I was talking about because I look up at the TV and I'm seeing Harry Reid because he announced his retirement today, and which is great, thank God. And I'm like, what happened to him? You get that from falling off a treadmill? I don't know. There's something weird about that. But anyways, putting a button on this topic with Uber, I was just saying I'm very skeptical of this legislation. I think there are free market alternatives that could happen. Uber could say, look, you have to get this coverage. Uber can make deals with certain insurance companies to get this liability, which benefits both of them. But when you have the government regulation and the government law, put this down right away. It smells of crony capitalism, and it gets rid of the other options. I like options. I like the free market. I like capitalism, and I like Uber. So we're going to talk about that. All right. The next thing I want to get into is something I found in the Florida Today. It's a newspaper site out of Melbourne, I guess, or Titusville area. There was an article by Matt Reid in the opinion section, and he does an interview with some teen criminals. And he's basically asking the question, and I want to ask you all the question as well. What causes a lot of these teens to become criminals? They get into drugs and drug dealing and violence and all that stuff. And he's asking, is it the parents? Is it society, quote unquote? Is it schools? And I think this is a great question asked. And there's one thing he did not address in his article at all, which I think needs to be addressed as well. But I want to know what you think. 407-674-1025. When you see kids get into real big trouble, when you see on the news kids shooting their friends, getting into gangs, who's at fault? What's causing this? And he actually interviews a couple of teen criminals who volunteered to go on his, I guess he has a TV show as well, to go on his TV show. This is a reporter from Florida Today, and talk about this. And I'm going to play some of that audio, and I want to get your take as well. 407-674-1025, 407-674-1025, 855-545-1025. Tell me what you think when teens become criminals and the crime in teams, especially in their cities, can go up in certain areas. What causes that, and how do we stop that, prevent that from happening? We're going to get that. We're going to get to that next on Beyond Reason Radio. You are, of course, listening to Beyond Reason Radio here at BeyondReasonRadio.com and News Radio 102.5 WFLA. We've been doing this show for a while, Friday nights at 8 p.m. Last couple of weeks, we've been doing 7 to 9 p.m. We have a whole other hour to go, Tom Benson.
That's good.
Why do I sense sarcasm in that? All right, never mind that. But yeah, and by the way, follow me on Twitter. You can find me on Twitter at Michael Yaffee. At Michael Yaffee. Follow me on Twitter. You can find Beyond Reason at my Facebook page, facebook.com/Beyond Reason Radio. Or just go to my website, beyondreasonradio.com. Tons of ways to subscribe to the podcast. Tons of ways to connect to me. So I found this article. This is, it's a few days old now, but I found this article in Florida Today. Guy by the name of Matt Reed. He does a lot of opinion pieces, and I think he has a TV show over there. Has an article, and it says, "Who's to blame for criminal teens?" 407-674-1025. Who's to blame for criminal teens? Because immediately when you read that article, I'm sure many of you have an explanation. Most of you probably say parents. Parents, probably the parents. Others might say the welfare state. There's a ton, the schooling system. There's a ton of reasons. So he brings this up, and he actually, he gives some examples here. He says, who else was responsible when 3 Titusville teenagers, ages 15 through 19, were charged with murder March 12th following a botched robbery? And what about the 17 and 18-year-olds charged in the crowbar attack on a teen in Satellite Beach last month? He says, I don't hold the village responsible when a small number of young adults who have been taught right from wrong and to avoid drugs all their lives reject the village rules and wind up in jail. So there's that, going to that whole saying, it takes a village to raise a child, which is baloney. Absolute baloney. That's communist. I'm just going to say it. That's like communist think right there. It takes good parents to raise a child. But he says, look, it's not society's fault. And he gets to the point because he ends up interviewing a couple of inmates in Brevard County Jail. And they're older now, but they became criminals when they were teens on drug-related charges. One is Floyd Hill, 47, age 47 now, of Titusville, and another, William Lake, age 23, of Merritt Island. They shared some warning signs for families. But Matt Reed asked an interesting question to the 23-year-old and asked him, what do you think causes this?
Is there anything that you think that your parents could have done differently that might have steered you in a different path?
They could have been there a little more. I grew up with just my mother, so she trying to support me, pay for the house herself. She always was at work constantly. There wasn't enough time to be there.
But she didn't do anything. Would you describe her as attentive to you when she could be?
Yeah, every time she could. Every time she had a chance, she was always there for me. She never wasn't there. I just made my own choices toward the end. Unfortunately, they weren't the right ones.
Right.
Interesting. So that's William Lake, 23. He's near the end of his prison term, and he's sitting there with Matt Reed, and he's in his striped suit, and his legs are chained and all that stuff. And he's asked, do you blame your parents? Now, he admits, once again, he lived in a single-parent home. This is once again tied to the fact that fathers are missing from the home. Big reason. 407-674-1025, by the way, if you have any reasons yourself. But he also says, look, I had a good parent. It was there for, it was there for me. I knew right from wrong. It's amazing that he takes full responsibility for it. It's an honorable thing. A lot of people won't do that. But when you have teens do something like this, is there something more to it? Is it parentings? Is it the school system? Is it society? Well, I think it's a combination of all three. But the one thing that is not addressed here is the lack of faith, the lack of God. And when I say the lack of God, I say all three things. You say parents, schooling, society, the lack of God, and all three of those things, I think, affects this. Not that, Christians obviously do bad things. People raised in Christian homes. Sometimes that can be worse because they're sheltered from the world and then they lash out later in life. But when you look at our pop culture society, when you look at our schooling system especially, and you look at a lot of parents, he did say that his parent, his mom was busy working all the time, single family home, all that stuff. They lack the faith. They lack that foundation of having God in their lives, having that foundation of Christianity and faith and the belief in right and wrong. Everyone in society is taught right and wrong. But when you have faith in God and you believe you're held accountable for your actions with God, not only that, but when you believe a God loves you and that if you believe in him, he'll be there for you, and it makes you a better person from the inside out. But this is never addressed when this stuff comes up, at least not in articles like Florida Today. We want to reform the school system and add a different curriculum or something. We want to say parents need to, have free preschool so the mom doesn't have to work as much or something. But none of that's going to work. When you look at problems in society like this, I guarantee you it's the lack of Christianity and Christian values and the belief in God. Our kids, just think about how much time of their lives, teenagers, kids, are in school. And yet they never hear any of this. In fact, nowadays, some of them are taught not to believe in that, to believe in the opposite of Christianity. And that's a huge part of their lives that they could get at least some foundation, some introduction from the Bible. They don't have to be taught Bible classes in school, but it's getting to the point in this politically correct society where you can't even mention it. Anything close to the Bible, anything close to mentioning God, you can't say it. A teacher can't even pray himself as an example, be an example himself a lot of times, and he's criticized. When you take that out of a society, you're going to get kids like this who don't understand, who get into the wrong thing. Because kids, human nature, we want to believe in something bigger than ourselves. We want to be a part of something bigger than ourselves. And if we don't give them something good to be a part of, like faith, like church, like youth groups, church youth group was if you're wondering why I'm so pro this, church youth group was a huge thing for me growing up. Really helped me as a person. And I would encourage any, if you have the right church and the right church leader, I would encourage any parent to have their kids join a church youth group, be a part of something. But if those kids are going to want to be a part of something bigger than themselves, and if they don't have those good things to be a part of, they're going to go to the bad things. 407-674-1025 if you have any further comments on that. What is it that we can do to help our kids? Or am I wrong? Is it just totally something else? Is it video games? Is it schooling? Is it parenting? Is it just a combination of everything else. I think it's a lack of God. All right, we are done with the first hour already, but never fear. There's another hour of Beyond Reason Radio coming up in the next hour. I'm going to dig deep into this Ted Cruz thing. Ted Cruz wanting to sign up for Obamacare. I'm more fascinated by people's reaction to it than I am by Ted Cruz himself doing it. So we're going to talk about that because, well, the show's called Beyond Reason, and like I said, there's so much going on beyond reason that I'm going to sift through. I'm going to be your voice of reason, and that is coming up in the next hour. Make sure to stay tuned, and I'll be right back. Beyond reason. You know what's beyond reason? Ted Cruz signing up for Obamacare. Well, maybe there's a reason. Also, the United States releasing declassified documents revealing Israel's nuclear program. Also, most Floridians do not agree with me on guns on campus. Coming up next on Beyond Reason Radio. That's right. Another hour. I know you all were wondering, waiting if there'd be a second hour. And there is a second hour of Beyond Reason. By the way, if you ever miss an hour of the show for any reason, there's a bajillion different ways to get this show now. Go to my website. And if you go to my website, it gives you links to all the different ways. Go to my website, beyondreasonradio.com. And there are ways to subscribe to TuneIn Radio. A lot of you have the TuneIn Radio app on your phone. Stitcher app. SoundCloud. You can also search, if you have the iHeartRadio app, you can also search Bud Hedinger Live on that. And my podcasts are on there as well. Or you can just listen straight on the website. So many different ways. You can find me on Twitter at Michael Yaffee. Find the show on Facebook, facebook.com/Beyond Reason Radio. This is the voice of reason, the voice of the millennial generation, the voice of the Yaffee generation, and the voice of reason through everything in the news that is beyond reason. And the biggest thing this week that seemed to be beyond reason to a lot of people, even though a lot of people are trying to justify it, and maybe they should. I've heard the reaction from both sides on this has been amazing. It's just, I tend to be an observer of a lot of things, if you haven't noticed. And just observing, sitting back and observing the reaction alone of Ted Cruz signing up for Obamacare fascinates me. Because it's like two totally different reactions. You have one reaction saying he's nuts, he's crazy, he's stupid. How can you release a campaign, and he did it brilliantly in front of young people, in front of a crowd with a great speech, and then do this? And then the other reaction who says Ted Cruz is brilliant. He is brilliant for doing this. So the two opposite sides of the spectrum reacting to this, just fascinating to me. So I'm going to play, I want to get into, in this show we like to get deeper into the topics, deeper into things. And I want to get deeper into what this means and why he might be doing this and why it might be a bad idea, why it might be a good idea. And to do that, I'm going to play here the original interview that he revealed this on CNN with Dana Bash. And basically, Dana Bash brings it up that he has to go on Obamacare, and Ted Cruz gives his reason. Here is the interview.
You and your family have been getting your health insurance through your wife's job. Her company has been Goldman Sachs. She has now left that to help you with your campaign. So where are you getting your health insurance now?
So she's taking an unpaid leave of absence from her job, and so we're transitioning. We'll be getting new health insurance, and we'll presumably do it through my job in the Senate. And so we'll be on the federal exchange like millions of others on the federal.
What? A person who didn't know this news already and watching that was like, wait. Ted Cruz just said he's going to go through the federal exchanges. That's Obamacare. This is the guy who hates Obamacare probably more than anyone except me. I hate it more than he does, but who hates it more than anyone else running for president probably. And he just says, oh, well, we're presumably going to go on the exchanges and go on Obamacare. And you're like, whoa, wait, what are you doing, Ted? So this continues on, and he tries to explain himself.
On the federal exchange.
So you will be getting Obamacare effectively.
It is one of the good things about Obamacare is that the statute provided that members of Congress would be on the exchanges without subsidies, just like millions of Americans. So there wouldn't be a double standard.
But, Senator, for right now, the irony is just kind of unbelievable that you have made your name fighting against Obamacare, and you now are going to sign up to get your insurance through that very process.
Stop
Obamacare.
It is ironic that this is the guy who hates Obamacare, and now he needs health insurance. Because he needs health insurance, he's going to go to Obamacare. Now, the argument that he's trying to make is I'm just following the law, which is right. If he wants his employee coverage through the Senate, then yes, the law says that they have to go through the exchanges to get Congress employee coverage, to get the special coverage. And so everyone's arguing, well, Ted Cruz is just following the law. And I'm thinking, the law doesn't state that you have to get it through your employer. There is no law that says Ted Cruz has to go on Obamacare now, has to go through the exchanges. This is the issue I have with. He has other options. 407-674-1025. If you have any comments on this, by the way, what do you think of Ted Cruz is doing? I'm sure a lot of you want to defend him, and I wanted to defend him. I love Ted Cruz. I love his campaign. His new campaign commercial is brilliant. I think anyone who counts him out is crazy. Even after this, if you count him out, you're crazy. Because he's very effective. But he just says, look, I'm going to go through Obamacare. And he's trying to be like he's one of the people, and I get that. But this was an opportunity to say, you know what, I could go through my employer and go through Obamacare, but I hate it so much, I'm not going to. I'm going to use some alternative, like MediShare. MediShare is another one. It's like a Christian community sharing health insurance alternative. Be a great way to go to an alternative or just go to a private market yourself. So you don't have to say, I'm going through the exchanges. Yeah, it might cost more, but you would say it's worth it because I want to show that alternatives to this are good. But Ted Cruz doesn't do that. And he explains his explanation further. Go ahead.
Listen, it was the case before Obamacare that federal employees could get health insurance through their jobs. That's not a new development. So yes, I'll get my insurance through my job like millions of other Americans. That's not a shocking.
Will you take a subsidy from your job, which is the federal government?
We will follow the text of the law. I strongly oppose the exemption that President Obama illegally put in place for members of Congress because Harry Reid and the Senate Democrats didn't want to be under the same rules as the American people.
That means you are going to take a government subsidy?
I believe we should follow the text of the law.
The law that you want to repeal?
Yes, no, I believe we should follow the text of every law, even laws I disagree with.
And that's a good point that, a lot of people disagree with a lot of the tax law, but you still follow. You follow the law. I think the last part by Dana Bash, by the way, was unfair. To say she's trying to catch him. Gotcha. With the whole, are you receiving a government subsidy? Because you're supposed to be against government subsidies. Well, it's not a government subsidy. He's an employee of the government. So technically his paycheck is a government subsidy, but it's not really like every other subsidy. He is an actual employee. He's just receiving an employee benefit. So to try to catch him is, are you receiving a government subsidy from the government, Mr. Anti-Government? That's a little bit unfair. So to get into that, it's like, come on, Dana. You're supposed to be a journalist, but do we really expect more from these people? But to try to go around and say, look, I'm just going to go on Obamacare like everyone else. Can you picture the ads that are going to come out that says even Ted Cruz uses Obamacare? Ted Cruz, who needed insurance, was able to get it through Obamacare. Obama made a mockery of him, welcoming him to Obamacare. They're like, yeah, come on in, Ted. This is what Obamacare is about. And then people were saying in his campaign or whatever, well, this is better than nothing. And don't say that. That is a great opportunity for the Democrats to say that's the point of Obamacare. That if you can't get it anywhere else, you have the option of getting it through the exchanges. That's why we created Obamacare, to get everybody insured. It works for Ted Cruz. It'll work for you. Just picture the ads. Politically, I just think this was not the smartest thing. If you're going to do this, you come out immediately, and this is what you say. I'm going on Obamacare because I want to be like all the other people who have to suffer through this. And I'm going to reveal just how bad this is. That even me, as an employee of the government, is going to go on it because that's how I get my insurance. And I'm going to reveal to all of you, to everybody, I'm going to suffer through you. Because I'm not above the people. I'm one of you, and I'm going to have to suffer through this like you are and reveal how bad it is. If he would have came out and said that, that would have been good, but he didn't say that. It was like he was caught off guard by the question, that no one would suspect that they would have a problem in this. But all they have to have is that headline out there. Ted Cruz goes on Obamacare. And that's it. All you have to have is those ads that says, it works for Ted Cruz. It'll work for you. To me, like I said before, it's beyond reason. Spin it the right way, and I wanted to defend him. And I do defend some of the things he says. If he wants to go through employee coverage, he has to follow the law. But then his campaign came out and said, well, they haven't decided yet exactly if they're going to go on Obamacare or not. Don't say that. You sound like you're on the defensive. Come on, Ted. Come on, buddy. You're supposed to be brilliant. I mean, I'm just some 28-year-old radio guy. You used to be the Solicitor General, I think, for Texas. He used to fight cases in the Supreme Court. By the way, when I hear people argue that he doesn't have enough experience, that's a lot of experience if you're fighting in front of the Supreme Court. That doesn't count as experience? To me, that would count as experience. I don't know about you, but anyone else who's not running for president, you would say, yeah, he has a lot of experience in government and the law. So how come that doesn't count as experience? We're counting that out just because he's a freshman senator doesn't mean he doesn't have experience in other things. And from what I've heard, he's supposedly a brilliant guy, but when I look at something like this, I'm like, they're going to rip you apart, man. And if we look at the last election, we can't let them do that. 407-674-1025. You want to defend Ted Cruz? You want to yell at me for getting on his case a little bit? I tried to go deep into this and explain why this could be a problem, but there are some positives if he spins it the right way. This all being said, Ted Cruz still has a really good chance, I believe. He is a very effective speaker. He is reaching an untapped electorate. The evangelical Christian electorate, which is the majority in this country, seems like they're being disenfranchised. And they're just not even voting. And he's going straight to them through the grassroots. And it's going to be effective. To count him out, I wouldn't do it. He could do well despite this. But come on, man. You got to start better than this. You got to start better than this. All right. The next thing I'm going to get into. Apparently there's a new poll out that the majority of Floridians disagree with me. How could that be possible? We'll talk about what they disagree with me on next. Beyond Reason on BeyondReasonRadio.com and News Radio 102.5 WFLA. Beyond reason. Ted Cruz signing up for Obamacare. Many think that's beyond reason. Many think it's brilliant. By the way, this is Beyond Reason Radio here, BeyondReasonRadio.com and News Radio 102.5 WFLA live in the second hour. By the way, make sure to follow me on Twitter at Michael Yaffee and follow the station on Facebook at Facebook.com/Beyond Reason Radio. Make sure to go to my website, BeyondReasonRadio.com. So I was talking about Ted Cruz, and I was digging deep into why maybe he would sign up for Obamacare, the explanations on both sides, why it's good, why it's bad, and why I think it could eventually be a problem. And I'm going to talk with Eva in Orlando and get her take. What do you think about this, Eva?
I think it's brilliant because it's a campaign thing. He said when he made it his announcement that the first thing he would do would be overturn Obamacare.
Correct.
Correct?
Yes.
Okay. Next thing, he's a smart man, or he wouldn't be where he is.
Yeah, that's true.
First of all, his wife had good insurance. Do you think that he's going to let his responsibility as a family man go? No. And he gets his insurance from his employee, which is the federal government.
Well, I mean, I get that, and you're right. If he has to get it through his employer, he would have to get it through the federal government. I get that. But there's nothing saying that he has to get it through his employer.
Why should he pay a fine and not get it? Because he can't get it nowhere else.
Yes, he can. You can go straight to insurance company.
Since Obamacare started, my dear friend, you ought to investigate it before you make a statement.
Well, I mean, I did, and from everything I read, you can still go straight to the private companies, or you can do MediShare, like I said, or Cobra.
But, again, maybe you don't want to spend the money.
Well, and that's the thing. They're saying he might not want to spend the money, or he wants to get it through his coverage. It just looks.
Well, to me, I think it's smart because.
Well, you're not the only one. A lot of people think it's smart.
Well, here I'm into Medicare and health care because, as far as I'm concerned, the government has lied the whole time, and I don't like it.
Right.
And the thing of it is I took in 2007 when Bush took the Advantage care. I took it because I worked in health care, and you've got one for the rich and one for the poor. And the Advantage care is for the poor. That's why I took it, because I wanted to speak out. I wanted to know how the insurance would affect poor people, and I've already seen it. Right now, since this year, since Obamacare came in, they have a girl, I guess she's supposed to be a nurse representing the government. She asked you, how's your memory? I'm not a doctor. Why is she asking me?
Well, yeah.
You know what I said? I told her yesterday. I said, well, I'm not the brightest light bulb in the room, but I'm smarter than a lot of Americans because I didn't vote for Obama.
Yeah, I gotcha.
All
right,
Eva. She laughed. But it's just stupid. I mean, there's a lot of dumb people out there.
Well, I got you.
Make your comparisons to. And that's why I like Ted Cruz, because he walks the walk.
Well, I like Ted Cruz, too. And I think, like I said, thank you, Eva, for your call. I like Ted Cruz, too. And I think he does a lot of good things. And I did investigate. When this happened, I'm like, okay, I'm hearing this argument that he has to go through Obamacare by law. So I'm reading and I'm looking at it, and from what I've understand from my research, and maybe someone can send me a correction, he doesn't have to go through the exchanges. If he wants his employee coverage, he has to. But he can go straight to private companies and still do it. I know people that do that. Exchanges was just another option. And you get the federal government subsidy, like they were saying, or you get the employee subsidy type of thing. But to me, it's just a perfect opportunity for the Democrats on the other side, and Obama himself, and other Republicans for that matter, to say this was a guy who lost his coverage because they lost employee coverage, and Obamacare was there for him, and he used it. And that's what's so great about Obamacare, because it's there for people who lose their coverage, and they can use it. That's just what I'm going to see. And you talked about problems in the healthcare market and how you wanted to expose it. There is no doubt that the healthcare market, the insurance market, all that stuff needed reform. There's no doubt that it needed reform. Obamacare was just the wrong reform. And we made it seem like Obama, before he did Obamacare, made it seem like the government wasn't involved in healthcare at all, that the private market was screwing things up, and this is why the government had to be involved. That's baloney. The government has been spending trillions of dollars since the 70s in getting involved in healthcare, in insurance. And then the states were overregulating the insurance companies. So this idea that the government wasn't involved just isn't true. But I wanted to support Ted Cruz on this. I wanted to get, because when my first reaction was not anger, and it was not, this is brilliant. My first reaction was confusion. What? Why? And I looked into it, and I'm like, I'm just not understanding this. Why would he do this when he has other options? And Eva says he doesn't. From what I've read, he does. I don't know. And then, like I said, he could have spun it in a way that helped him. Like Eva was even saying some ways that he could have spun it, but he didn't do that. He made it seem like, well, I just have to do this. Come on, man. You got to do better. You got to do better. All right. So there was a new thing. I found a new poll out that shows that the majority of Floridians disagree with me. So this means that not enough people are listening to this show. And they need to listen to the show. Because I laid out a few weeks ago why I believe students should be allowed, if they're licensed and go through the training, they should be allowed to carry a gun on campus if they want to. Well, there's a new poll out commissioned by Everytown for Gun Safety Action, and Florida Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America found 61% of Floridians oppose the proposal to require all public colleges and universities in Florida to allow people to carry concealed handguns on campus. Come on, man. You need to listen to the show. 61% of the people are not listening to this show. They need to listen. And I just think it's a good idea because after I read that poll, I just happened to go to the Orlando Sentinel for a separate reason. And there's talk on the Orlando Sentinel right now about a gang problem outside of the UCF area that is growing and getting worse. And that students are becoming concerned. Because there has been violence. And by the way, earlier, I think it was late last year, there was a girl lived on the off-campus apartments, right off campus. A couple people invaded her home, tried to attack her. They could have tried to rape her. How did she scare them away? She got her gun. And she scared them away, and it protected her. That happened late last year, right off UCF. And now we have a gang problem right outside of UCF. And yet we're telling adults with permits that they have no options to protect themselves? To me, that doesn't make sense. We're expecting the police, and this is a whole societal thing, we're expecting the police to do it for us. You can't expect them to always be there. It's impossible. There's not enough of them. In a free country, adults should be allowed to protect themselves. And if I'm on campus and I'm a licensed carrier and I'm hearing about gang problems near UCF, it could very well get into UCF on campus. I'm going to want a gun to protect myself. Makes sense to me. Do you think the gangs are going to they're going to go to the campus and they're going to see that sign that says gun-free zone? Oh, can't go in there. Okay, I guess I'll leave. And it's like it creates a safety bubble on campus? No. And I know there's concerns about, well, college kids could, get rowdy or whatever. Adults, any adult can do that. A college kid is still an adult. They should be allowed to protect themselves. But because of this irrational fear we have in our pop culture of the gun, because we just live in a time where guns are just not as part of life as they used to be, when we hear laws like this, our immediate reaction is, oh, we can't have that on campus. Because we think that the law is going to stop the gun. It's not going to. especially from the bad guys. All right, another Beyond Reason thing coming up next. The United States declassifies part of Israel's nuclear program? Right when we're talking with Iran about their nuclear program? Really? I think we all know who's up to this. You're listening to Beyond Reason, BeyondReasonRadio.com, News Radio 102.5 WFLA. You know, if there's anybody out there who defies reason, who's beyond reason in terms of what he does, it's, well, Barack Obama. Now, of course, they didn't say directly that he was responsible for this, but I see it. As you all know, he is trying to make a deal with Iran, even though he can never get the support from Congress. We'll go around Congress, that's fine. He's trying to make a deal with Iran to, he says, not allow them to have nuclear weapons, but allow them to have free nuclear energy. Okay, because they're going to do that. It's so funny. One of the big news items this week was during these talks, we're talking about this, and then, what is it? The Ayatollah comes out and says, "Death to America." It's brand new this week. Oh, he's just, and the State Department's like, "Oh, that's just rhetoric." That Ayatollah. He's so funny with his talk. He's just kidding. He's just joking. Excuse me, isn't he like the supreme dictator of Iran who has ultimate control? No, it's just to help his people. It's just to get them on board, because it's popular to hate America over there. Although a lot of young people like America over there. That's a whole nother topic. But and I read on Breitbart, I believe, that they expect the deal to come by this Sunday. This Sunday, they expect this deal to be wrapped up. John Kerry's over there talking with them, saying, we're going to have a deal that allows you to have some centrifuges still and even underground bunkers, I've heard. And Israel, obviously, Netanyahu was here a few weeks ago saying, no, this is a terrible idea. And Israel's very upset at this. There's still, in fact, Israeli officials, I read an article. Where did I see this article? The Times of Israel actually are saying they brand this as a terrible idea. Awful. And Obama doesn't care. So what does Obama do against Israel? Well, this happened, it happened in February quietly, but now it's everywhere. All the media outlets are on this now. On February 12th, the Pentagon quietly declassified a top-secret 386-page Department of Defense document from 1987 detailing Israel's nuclear program. This is what's really interesting about this declassified document. By the way, this is the first time Israel's alleged nuclear program has ever been officially and publicly referenced by U.S. authorities. Ever. No other president has done it except Barack Obama. Well, the Pentagon did it. Oh, the Barack Obama didn't know. Probably found out on the news. That's what he always says. I just found out about that. I was watching the news one day and what's my Pentagon doing? Oh, I don't know. But we know he was directly involved. This is what's really interesting about this, though. In the declassified document, the Pentagon reveals supposed details about Israel's deterrence capabilities, but it kept sections in France, Germany, and Italy classified. So they declassified Israel's part, but not of other allies, of other countries, specifically France, Germany, and Italy. Those sections are blacked out in the documents. Why? Well, we all know why. This is to get back at Israel. The Obama administration does not like what Israel's doing, so they're going to release some documents that outrage the world and outrage the Middle East more, but they're going to make sure we don't do it to our other allies. Both these media were rumored, the two main exceptions in the international media that wrote about the declassification at the time were the state-funded Iranian regime. Iran picked it up, and the state-funded Russian station RT. Both of those, they're the ones who really made this public. both of those media were apparently tipped off by Washington. So you have Iranian state-controlled TV and Russia state-controlled TV, our enemies, tipped off about this declassified report by Washington, most likely by the Obama administration. Wow. So not only do they declassify something, specifically Israel. They made sure it was specifically Israel. They were declassifying their nuclear program. Now, Israel's smart. I doubt they have the same program they had in 1987, but this is just a jab at them. This is just to get back at them. And then they black out other parts of the document, coincidentally. And then they have the gall to go to our worst enemies and say, psst, hey, Iran, check out this we just released. Psst, hey, Russia, check out this we just released. You're going to like this. And they pick it up, and they make it public. Amazing. Amazing. And so Israeli officials, by the way, are saying they're branding this deal as incomprehensibly bad. Obviously, they're just trying to save their country. It's amazing to me when you think about what the Obama administration has done in the Middle East in the past few years. The places he has praised as beacons of hope for the future are Yemen, look at them now, Iraq, look at Iraq now, and Egypt. Now, Egypt is only getting better after the Muslim Brotherhood was ousted, but while the Arab Spring was going on and then the Muslim Brotherhood was brought to power, Obama praised it. It's a beacon of democracy in the Middle East. 3 places right there. Iraq is being destroyed by ISIS. Yemen is being destroyed by ISIS and other things. And Egypt is not supported by him now. It was supported by him during the Muslim Brotherhood, but not supported now. Those were the beacons of hope. And then when you look at the real beacon of hope in the Middle East, which is Israel, he bashes them. He has a bad relationship with the prime minister. He boycotts a speech from him. He sends campaign operatives to work against the Netanyahu campaign, which, thank God, didn't work. Netanyahu still won that election by quite a bit. And then he declassifies documents detailing Israel's nuclear program. And then he gets in speeches and says he's still a friend of Israel. Where's the evidence of that? He might be one of the biggest dangers to the state of Israel in the world right now. Israel's a very small country. Just think what one nuclear bomb could do to that country. You want to talk Holocaust. It would be worse, and it would be instantaneous. So they're trying to fight for their lives over in Israel. They're trying to fight for their existence from evil. And our president is helping the enemy. Unbelievable. I told you when I started this show this week that there are so many things that happened this week that are beyond reason.
The irony is Jewish Democrats vote Democratic.
I know.
Why?
Still, it's unbelievable. I've known some Jewish people who are very supportive of Israel. In fact, I went to when I was in college, I had to go to I was a religious studies major. I have a degree in religious studies. And I had to go to other religious things as a part of my class. And I went to a synagogue a couple times. And the synagogue is very supportive of Israel. And in fact, they had a song all in Hebrew, and during one of their songs I was very confused because they bowed towards the front of the place, the front of the building. And I'm like, what? Why are they doing that? I don't know. And there was like a shelf back there, and it had the Torah in it, and I thought maybe it was that. And then I talked with them afterwards, to get more details for my report I had to do. Very interesting, very nice people. And they told me, oh, they're bowing towards Israel. There's a lot of talk in Jewish communities, Jewish synagogues, that is pro-Israel. That's very focused on the state of Israel. It's a deep part of their faith in a lot of ways. And yet, you're right. I bet you half the people in that congregation vote Democrat and voted for Obama. Twice. Exactly. Yeah, that in itself is beyond reason. I personally don't understand it, other than the fact that, I don't know, they're just not informed of it, or the propaganda coming from regular mainstream media gets to them. I don't know. Hopefully the Republicans will maybe use this in the future. Maybe it'll work. I mean, there's so many examples of how the Democrats and the Obama administration is hurting the state of Israel. Hopefully the Jewish community will wake up. In the next segment, the last segment of the show, I guess, I want to talk about the future. Because the future of technology is also the future of warfare. And if America wants to still be strong, we have to be up with the latest technology to win wars. Where is that latest technology going to be? I'm going to tell you next. You're listening to Beyond Reason, News Radio 102.5 WFLA and BeyondReasonRadio.com. You are listening to Beyond Reason here at BeyondReasonRadio.com, News Radio 102.5 WFLA. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. I usually produce Bud Henninger Live, morning 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. on this station. If you want to get in touch with me, you can find me on Twitter at Michael Yaffee. Find me on Facebook, facebook.com/BeyondReasonRadio. And plenty of places to subscribe to the podcast. Just go to my website, BeyondReasonRadio.com, to see. Plenty of places to catch up with the show. So, Tom Benson, lately I've been watching a lot of like History Channel documentaries and stuff. Do you watch that stuff?
From time to time, I watch historical stuff, but, ice roads to Alaska just has no interest for me.
Yeah, I can't stand that stuff.
Yeah.
But they posted a lot of the shows on Netflix, and one of them I'm watching is Mankind, the Story of All of Us. Do you ever watch that one?
I think I may have caught one episode when it was originally on.
Yeah, I mean, because they had America, the Story of Us, and then they had Mankind, the Story of All of Us. And one thing that's really fascinating about it is that Mankind goes to the history of all human civilization, and they talk about, a lot of times when they talk about big changes in history, it ties directly to big changes in military technology.
Okay.
Which is really interesting about how these empires really gained their power and changed the world through new technology in the military.
Sure.
Started with iron, making iron swords readily available. Then you go to the Mongols. They were the first ones to really use the horse effectively in combat. Then the Chinese brought gunpowder and used gunfire. And then eventually, I think...
Yeah, the Industrial Revolution.
Yeah, exactly, which was brought in World War I. So it got me thinking, what is the next step in military technology?
Twitter.
We're
going to do hashtag war.
Hashtag war, yeah. There we go. Tom Benson has found the answer. America needs to step up its Twitter fight. But I'm really thinking, though, what is the next step in military technology? Where does America need to be?
Cyber warfare.
Well, that's funny. I didn't really think about that. But that's very true. Cyber warfare is one thing. I was thinking lately, what's the big one? And most people would say drones. Military drones is what, before we left Iraq, like too soon, obviously, and ISIS took over. One reason that we were very effective in that war, under General Petraeus, was the expanded use of drones.
Yeah. Well, drones are controlled by, from a
Right.
distance by cyber, computers and stuff and
Exactly.
joysticks and what have you. So that's part of the cyber warfare.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
they're controlled by computers. They're controlled. And I was thinking robotics is the other one. That's really where the future of warfare is in robotics. But I started thinking about what is the center of all that? Where does all that connect? And it hit me. Space. Space, because that's where all the satellites are.
Sure.
That we do all our communication, where all those drones are communicated through. If we had any type of robots fighting in a war, they would be communicating through the satellites in space.
Well, back in the 80s.
Yes, Reagan. Yes, go ahead.
There was a lot of, space wars, Star Wars type stuff going on then.
Yeah. And the Chinese have really developed this. And this is why I am one of the biggest proponents of NASA. It's one area where I think the government should spend more money, because it's national security interest. We have to be in space. We have to defend our infrastructure. We have an infrastructure in space that has to be defended.
Oh, by the way, you may have missed it today. We sent up a few astronauts via a Russia missile.
Yeah. Oh,
rocket.
A year mission to the ISS. Yeah. And you're right. We said, oh man, thanks for that reminder. But I was happy to hear. I found this from the Washington Free Beacon. I was happy to hear that Pentagon military and intelligence officials outlined plans earlier this week for warfare in space, and warned China not to attack U.S. satellites in any future conflict. I was very happy to hear that, because I think that's the future. We like to pretend that space is peaceful and we don't need to militarize it. We're going to have to. Because if we remain peaceful up there, the Chinese are not. The Russians are not. And we're very vulnerable. Our whole military infrastructure is vulnerable now if they attack our satellites in space. And we need to be involved up there. Air Force Lieutenant General John J. Raymond said the threats are real. They're technologically advanced and they're a concern, talking about China. We are quickly approaching the point where every satellite in every orbit could be threatened. Just imagine if the Chinese one day have the technology and they take out half our military satellites. Our military is dumb. I mean, we're not dumb, but it would be really damaging, especially with how much we depend on drones and robotics. Like you said, cyber warfare, all that stuff. We have to be involved in this. And I think we can be. A lot of people think we're going the way of the Roman Empire, where we're stretched too thin, we're going to fall apart. It's another thing that documentary talked about. Very interesting stuff. I'm such a nerd when it comes to this stuff. I never thought I would become this person who watches the History Channel. Like my dad used to think I was born, and now I'm this person. And they have some good stuff, though. But Douglas Lavero, who's Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Space Policy, said that the threat of attacks on satellites in orbit is no longer a theoretical concern. Quite frankly, it's one thing to anticipate an imaginary threat. It's another thing to see that threat develop, watch it be exercised, as with the Chinese on several occasions, recognize what it can do to our capability, and react to that. And that's what we are doing right now. It's reacting to it and making it very clear we have no desire to have a conflict extend to space. So that sounds like peace through strength kind of thing. That if we build the military infrastructure in space to defend our satellites, defend our space infrastructure, that it will prevent them from having that. It's a defense. It makes sense to me. We have to do it. But we can't do it if we're not in space. And we have to, and I think a lot of that space technology that's up there now was first developed by NASA, first put up there by the Space Shuttle program. And now we're dependent on the Russia and Chinese going over there? No, they said they're outlining plans to spend $5 billion over the next 5 years to bolster defenses against attacks on satellites. So that's good. But this is one thing, and I don't know if anyone would do it. I think Marco Rubio would because he's from Florida. But I don't understand why someone running for president, and I didn't understand this in the last election, why someone running for president wouldn't bring up NASA, maybe even go to the Space Coast and say, I am going to, I know, Tom Benson's saying money. I get that. But compared to what we spend on other things in the budget, NASA is so minuscule right now to what we spend on NASA compared to other things in the budget.
It's visionary. You need a visionary to sell the sell the concept.
Vision. I like that you actually. I'm very glad you brought that up because that is really what I'm looking for in a candidate. Someone who has vision. We're missing that vision. You know, JFK had the vision of going to the moon. He said we're going to do it not because it's easy, but because it's hard. Ronald Reagan had the vision of, what you call Star Wars, the SDI, which the technology is being used in Israel today for their Iron Dome. That started with SDI. Why can't we have a candidate go to the Space Coast, say, look at the opportunity that is here. I am going to bring us to Mars, to the moon, and to Mars within the decade. I am going to bring space technology. We are going to be on the cutting edge where no longer we have to depend on the Chinese and the Russians. And I'm going to defend our space infrastructure from attack from our enemies. Because that's the future. Our very survival is at stake there. So, kind of a history lesson, kind of a visionary topic we're talking about. Find it very interesting. Wow, that 2 hours went by really fast. You were listening to Beyond Reason Radio. If you missed any part of the show, go to my website, beyondreasonradio.com, or go to Facebook, facebook.com/Beyond Reason Radio. Hopefully, I will catch you all next week.
That nothing comes from indifference. I look inside.